Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first medical device software session on CDRH Learn. My name is John F. Murray, Jr., and I am the software compliance expert here at the Device Center of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. This session is designed as an introduction to the fact that CDRH regulates software in several different areas beyond just medical device software. Let's get started. I want you to know that CDRH has a regulatory interest in 5 distinct areas for software. Our regulations cover the following areas of software: medical device software, software used in the automation and control of medical device production and manufacturing systems, software used in the automation and control of medical device quality systems, software and computers that are used in the conduct of clinical investigations, and software and computers used for the implementation and control of electronic records and electronic signature systems. The regulatory model and requirements for each of these areas is not the same. The regulatory model for each differs based on the specific regulatory requirements and the risk related to each software use. During this session, I will only be talking about medical device software. This is a basic module that is focused on the introduction to medical device software. It was challenging to distill a great amount of knowledge down to the point where we can say that this is what we believe you need to know first about medical device software. This presentation is not a complete thesis on medical device software, but only serves as an introduction. There is an expectation that more software-related presentations will be developed in the future. This presentation is focused on what the law requires, what is medical device software, and what FDA has written about medical device software. It does not focus on what is not medical device software and what the FDA has not written about or has not decided about medical device software. I want you to understand the legal definition of medical device software and to have some tools in hand that will help you think about whether your software meets the legal definition of a device. I want to provide you with some illuminating examples of medical device software that will help you compare and contrast your software to medical device software. Then, after I move out of the device, not a device portion of this session, I want to provide some regulatory background that describes the general controls that the law requires for medical devices, including medical device software. I hope to provide a list of FDA software reference material that will help you further explore this topic. In the last session, I plan to cover something I refer to as mystifications related to medical device software. This is a list of common questions that I receive on a routine basis, and here is where I will try to remove the mystery by providing clarifications to clearing up the mystifications. This is the disclaimer slide. I ask that you please remember that this is educational material designed for illuminating and illustrative purposes. It is not all-inclusive and does not give you the right not to think. In fact, just the opposite is true. This material is designed to allow you to think. It is not formal policy, guidance, regulation, or law. It actually has no legal standing. In the end, you will need to take this introduction and go back and read and study the actual regulatory documents. The straightforward legal regulatory answer would read as follows. Any software that meets the legal definition of a device is a device and is known as medical device software. On this slide, I show the legal definition of a device. I quote from the Device Advice section of the FDA CDRH webpage. If a product is labeled, promoted, or used in a manner that meets the following definition in Section 201H of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, FD&C Act, it will be regulated by the Food and Drug Administration as a medical device and is subject to pre-market and post-market regulatory controls. The definition in the first paragraph makes it abundantly clear that a device can be almost any product, including just software. Standalone software could be considered as simply an implement, a contrivance, or other similar or related article. The first key point to this definition is the fact that software is contained within the scope of this definition. From a software perspective, this definition will be viewed as a black box definition and not a white box definition. The definition is focused on what it does and not on how it does it. Dissecting a bit, further we can say that if the contrivance, or the black box, is intended for use in the diagnosis of disease or other conditions, or in the cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease, it would meet the definition of a device. Meeting the definition is independent of how the contrivance is actually implemented. To meet the definition, the product does not have to provide the complete diagnosis of disease or other conditions, or the complete cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease. It simply has to be intended for use in or part of. However, there is not a definitive list of what is and what is not a device, and for that matter, what software is or is not a device. The software product spectrum is highly diverse and complex. It is diverse in the fact that there can literally be a software solution for every problem, and each software solution can solve all or just parts of the issues in any given domain. I have been told that there are over 15,000 registered device manufacturers in the U.S. alone. We do not have any count on how many of these products contain software or are just software alone, but the number is growing every day. These software solutions are complex given the fact that they are widely distributed in multiple versions, running on multiple platforms, and interconnected through multiple systems and mediums. Every time we examine some form of software to determine if it is a device, we need to examine all of the claims and many other details. This thinking process is not static and must adapt as medicine, science, and engineering evolve. Software as a component is the most straightforward. If the software is a component of a medical device, then by definition, that software is also a device. To verify this, I refer you back to the definition. Software can also be an accessory to a medical device, and in that case, the software is itself a device and assumes the legal status as its parent device, or the device to which it is an accessory. Software that is known as standalone software can also be a device. Standalone software does not have a specific regulatory definition, but commonly refers to software designed to run on commercially available, off-the-shelf computer hardware, and or what is known as a general-purpose computer. All of these forms can be devices or can meet the legal definition of a device. Whenever I'm asked the question, is this software a device and how should it be classified, I try to work from my standard set of questions. I show this list of questions on this slide. The ordering and sequence of these questions can be modified to suit the specific situation. If the answer to the first question, does it meet the legal definition of a device, is no, then the remaining questions become unnecessary. The inclusive bullet is just a reminder that the software does not have to provide the complete diagnosis, cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention, only be used in. If it is simply an electronic version of some existing library source material, then it would not be considered a device by CDRH. The key focus here is on the word simple. An electronic version that contains additional algorithms or clinical intended uses beyond how the paper library version could be used more than likely would be considered a device. If the software meets the definition of an existing medical device classification, then that software will be classified in the same manner. If the software is an accessory to an existing medical device, then the software will be classified in the same manner as that existing device. Generally speaking, CDRH is focused on devices intended for use in a patient-specific manner. Generic survey types of software that are based on widely available statistical data, that are not based on specific patient clinical data or evaluation, and do not provide patient-specific output are not the focus of CDRH. By the time you get to this point, you have a software device that is not currently classified, or in other words, it does not fit into any previously identified regulatory slot or pathway. So in order to determine the appropriate pathways, we would need to ask two questions. What is the risk, and what is the intervention case? A key point here is the fact that human intervention is not used to decide whether the software is or is not a device, but instead is used to decide how this device should be regulated. To add some regulatory context to the discussion, I suggest that the initial regulatory process consists of three parts. In the first part, we decide whether or not the software is a device. After that, we need to move on to who is the device manufacturer. This question for software can become complex very quickly, given the fact that software developers may or may not be software marketers. The details of this discussion are beyond the scope of this presentation. I just wanted to mention it because it is not always a fact that just because you are developing medical device software under contract does not automatically make you a manufacturer. To make this decision, CDRH would examine the specific business model being used, the contractual relationships, and the specific marketing claims made by the individual parties. So that after we have a device and we have a manufacturer, we would then need to decide how the device should be classified according to precedence and risk. In other words, how should it be regulated? The legal definition is based on the intent of the product related to diagnosis, cure, mitigation, treatment, and prevention of disease. The legal definition is not based on the engineering definition of software functionality or any specific engineering implementation of design solution. When making this call, you can think of this from a black box perspective only. The legal definition does not contain any reference to any specific hardware, software, or information technology. In other words, it does not depend on software type or language, computer type or design, or any other specifics related to any selected information technology that will be used to implement the device. This process is known as the software device determination. In this slide, I simply break the definition down into several parts. I put these parts into the form of a question. I suggest that when making your determination, you address each of the following questions in a complete and documented fashion. Is my software a component of a medical device? Is my software an accessory to a medical device? Do I intend for my software to be used in the diagnosis of disease or other conditions, in the cure of disease, in the mitigation of disease, in the treatment of disease, in the prevention of disease? If your software meets the legal definition of a device, then it's still a device regardless of the means by which the software is delivered to the end user. Factory installed, installed by a third-party vendor, field installed or upgraded, on a compact disc, on a memory stick, downloaded from a website, embedded. In my first example, I have chosen a device that has recently been classified. To understand the intended use of this product, I encourage you to go to the FDA website and read the specific description for this system. This device also has a special controls document associated with it. It is available for free download on the FDA website. Just go to the guidance section and search on the keywords remote medication. I would also like to point out the form of the slide. It starts with the product name and description, followed by some words directly from the device definition. The illumination here is to put forth the idea that no matter what the software description or name is, if it's intended for use in the diagnosis of disease or other conditions, or in the cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease in man or other animals, then it is a device. On this slide, I focus on another category of software that typically meets the definition of a device. I call that category clinical software and provide 4 examples. Data management software that is intended for use in EKG analysis, drug dose calculating software, clinical scoring system software, medical application software. Please remember, not all clinical software is a device. Not all data management software is a device. Not all clinical scoring software is a device. And not all medical application software is a device. There's a lot of confusion in the industry because some have concluded that data management software cannot be a device. Scoring system software cannot be a device. Medical application software cannot be a device. There is no conclusive list of what is and what is not a device. In order to get the right answer, you need to focus on the intended use and not the software functionality or the software nomenclature. On this slide, I try to show that the same logic can apply to another broad category of software. In this case, decision support software. Some have argued that my examples are not decision support software, but instead clinical software or some other form of medical application. This exact argument is what creates the great confusion of software device determination. When we argue about what is clinical software or decision support software, we quickly lose focus on the real issue, and that is, what is the intended use? For example, online calculator software can fall into different categories. Yet not all online calculator software is a device, because not all online calculator software has an intended use that meets the definition of a device. At this point, I want to move away from the question of whether software is or is not a device, and start with the idea that when the software is a device, what should I know next? The foundation legal fact is that the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act requires that medical devices, including software, be classified into one of 3 classes. The study and understanding of how and why different devices are classified into each specific class is a topic that is beyond the scope of this module. From a software perspective, it is important to know the following. Device classification is based on risk, with Class 3 being the highest risk case. There is a well-defined legal structure that exists, and that structure dates back to 1976. Medical device software is also classified into one of 3 categories. The specific classification of devices and medical device software is based on the intended use from a clinical viewpoint and not from an engineering viewpoint. In this slide, we see the terms intended use and indications for use. The study and detailed explanation of these terms is beyond the scope of this module. I use them here for illustrative purpose. In this example, the software's intended use is stated as to retrieve and process data from a stethoscope. This statement by itself is not detailed enough to determine the clinical risk until we understand specifically what this intended use is indicated for. To understand the clinical risk, we must examine the indications for use. In this example, for the detection of heart murmurs. There could be many other indications for use for this example: to listen to your heartbeat, to measure heartbeats, to determine proper heart valve operation, to evaluate proper blood flow volume, etc. As you can see, possible use could be almost limitless. The more specific the use, the more detailed the risk assessment can be, thereby adding clarity to the classification process. The key issue here is the fact that device classification is based on clinical intended use and on specific software engineering functionality. Under the device law, each class of device has very specific controls that are required to ensure the reasonable safety and effectiveness of the device and its software. I do not intend to cover all of these details, but I do intend to drill down on several that I believe are important to understand if you're in the medical device software business. At this point, I want you to understand that the law provides a very specific architecture for the segregation and control of the various types of medical devices and their associated software. Since the general controls are required for all device classes, I think it would be a good place to start. So what are the general controls? They are the basic provisions of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. They provide the FDA with the means of regulating devices. The general controls apply to all medical device software. This is the entire list of general controls that I copied from the FDA website. I am not going to cover each and every one of these items. In fact, for most of these, I'm not going to say anything at all. This list is here for conceptual purposes. It goes like this. There is a medical device law. Software can be a medical device. Software devices are classified into one of three classes, and the law requires a specific set of general controls be used for any medical device and for any medical device software. My goal with this slide is to show the pathway from the law down to some more specific software-related information. I believe that it is vital for software engineers and designers to understand the architecture of the law and the specific traceability to the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. One of the most important general controls for software is known as good manufacturing practices. I include here words from the FDA website to explain the purpose of good manufacturing practices. The ultimate goal here is to ensure that finished devices will be safe and effective and otherwise in compliance with the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. Another key idea here is the fact that good manufacturing practices establish basic requirements applicable to manufacturers of finished medical devices. The general control known as good manufacturing practices has been developed into a regulation known as 21 CFR 820, the Quality System Regulation. The overall study of the quality system typically starts with a 5-day basic introduction course that is not within the scope of this module. Instead, what I have on this slide are some illuminating points that a medical device software manufacturer should keep in mind when studying the entire quality system. The first item is that all parts of the quality system can be applicable to software, not just the parts that specifically mention software. All medical device software needs to be under some form of control. I state this as saying that all medical device software must be under some form of design control and or purchasing control. I have included some specific language that is directly applicable to medical device software. The regulation requires that design validation shall include software validation and risk analysis. And you can find the language in 21 CFR 820.30G. The regulation would also require that for third-party software providers and vendors, the device manufacturer have a system in place to evaluate and select potential suppliers, contractors, and consultants on the basis of their ability to meet specified requirements. The evaluation shall be documented. This language is contained in 21 CFR 820.50A1. The quality system includes an array of controls for various aspects of medical device design and manufacture. In this slide, I want to point out 3 controls that I consider significant for the assurance of safe and effective medical device software. The simple explanation here is that design controls are used for all medical device software. In addition, purchasing controls are useful when you contract out or purchase your software. And corrective and preventative actions are vital to address software faults and failures. The FDA has a specific guidance document focused on the design control requirements of the quality system regulation. It is available for free download on the FDA website. You can easily locate this guidance using the search words design controls. Design controls are based upon quality assurance and engineering principles. To support the software validation requirement of the quality system regulation, the FDA has written a final guidance for industry and FDA staff. The document is entitled The General Principles of Software Validation and is available for free download on the FDA website. You can find this document by searching with the keywords software validation. As you will recall, pre-market notification is a general control that is necessary for Class 1 and Class 2 devices. For Class 3 devices, this element is more formally known as pre-market approval. In either case, this pre-market activity requires a review by FDA. From a software perspective, this review is focused on establishing a reasonable assurance of the safety and effectiveness of your medical device software. This level of FDA review is based on risk, safety, uniqueness, and complexity of your medical device software. The FDA has written a guidance document on the topic of pre-market review and submission. The guidance is designed to let you know what software documentation you should provide when making your software pre-market submission. This guidance document is focused on what you should submit and not on what you should do to ensure the safety of your medical device software. The previous 2 guidances on design controls and software validation provide guidance on what you should do to ensure device and software safety. The software pre-market guidance is available for free download on the FDA website using the keyword search of software pre-market. The FDA recognizes the fact that many medical device manufacturers will use off-the-shelf software as a component in their medical devices. In response to this, the FDA has published a guidance document on off-the-shelf software. The purpose of the document is to provide guidance on what should be submitted to the agency in a pre-market submission when the manufacturer decides to use off-the-shelf software as a component of their medical device design. This guidance is also available for free download on the FDA website using the keyword search of off-the-shelf. Cybersecurity represents many design and maintenance challenges for interconnected medical devices. In the past, there was a lot of confusion about how the FDA regulations and the quality system would apply to cybersecurity issues in interconnected medical devices. To address this confusion, the FDA wrote a guidance document to outline general principles that we consider to be applicable to software maintenance actions required to address cybersecurity vulnerabilities for network medical devices, specifically those that incorporate off-the-shelf software. This guidance is available for free download on the FDA website using the keyword search of cybersecurity. Before I move away from the software guidances, I would like to provide some context for the use of software guidance. They are not all-inclusive. They do not include all the details that are necessary to ensure that your medical device software is safe and effective. These are tools intended for use by skilled professionals with appropriate training and critical thinking skills. They are not intended to be engineering design specifications. They provide the basics, the frameworks, the basic concepts. They are guidances and concept providers. Safe and effective software is created to the appropriate engineering level of detail by skilled professionals utilizing the advice provided by guidance and the framework recommended. In the past, there have been many questions about the level of software review. This slide is designed to illustrate the basic sequence of review detail. The level of review is based on risk, safety, uniqueness, and complexity. The review proceeds until the assurance case can be established. At the basic level, the software design outputs are reviewed. This can be followed by an expert software engineering review, and a more detailed review can occur on a case-by-case basis. A detailed software code review may include the use of automated tools. For those medical device manufacturers looking for that go-to standard to help them get started in the medical device software industry, the FDA has recognized the IEC 62304 as that standard. This standard provides a framework of lifecycle processes with activities and tasks necessary for the safe design and maintenance of medical device software. This standard provides requirements for each lifecycle process. Each lifecycle process is further divided into a set of activities, with most activities further divided into a set of tasks. The standard is available for purchase from the standards market, and there is industry training available on its use and understanding. At this point, I want to move away from the specific regulatory requirements and the guidances and focus on what I call regulatory software mystifications, a term I use to describe some common misunderstanding and misinterpretation of the FDA rules related to software and computer systems. Mystification comes by combining mystery with the term clarification. Software by itself can be a device, as we discussed in the earlier sections of this module. Many people have convinced themselves that software is not an entity and therefore cannot be a device. This is incorrect. Software can meet the legal definition of a device. The entire quality system can apply to software, and not just the parts that specifically mention the word software. The quality system applies to the entire medical device, all of its components, including software. There is no prohibited software list. As a manufacturer, you can choose to use any type of software or software product for your medical device design. The quality system is very generic in this regard and allows the manufacturer to make the design and selection decision that he or she thinks is appropriate for their device. I must point out, of course, that the FDA will still hold the manufacturer responsible for compliance to the quality system. In other words, your design decisions cannot become an excuse for noncompliance. There is no prohibited software method. The manufacturer is allowed to choose any software lifecycle, software method, or software technique in the design and development of their device. Of course, the FDA will still hold the manufacturer responsible for compliance to the quality system. In other words, your design decisions cannot become an excuse for noncompliance. You can convert paper copies to electronic form. Records required by the quality system can be kept in paper or electronic form. The manufacturer gets to make that decision. A manufacturer is allowed to convert their paper records to electronic records provided the appropriate controls and validation processes and systems are in place. I have received many phone calls from vendors seeking software certification from the FDA. I cannot provide this function because the FDA does not have a software certification system. Instead, what the law does require is that device manufacturers meet the quality system requirements for their own software to be able to demonstrate that when the FDA asks. The controls and actions required by the quality system do not contain a zero set of requirements. There is always some minimum set of controls that must be in place for every medical device. I have heard some say that based on risk, we have done nothing. My response has always been that risk analysis cannot justify doing nothing, because at the very minimum, you will need to have done some form of risk analysis to establish the level of risk. Under 21 CFR 820.70I, the automation of record keeping through computers and electronic records would need validation based on the fact that electronic records and record-keeping systems are automated systems when they are used to keep required quality system records. The word automation in 21 CFR 820.70I creates a lot of confusion. I can simplify that confusion by stating that automated generally means contains software. With the introduction of medical device software to the family of CDRH Learn products, we have created a new email address designed to provide a more direct access to software-related issues. It goes by the name CDRH Software Questions and is shown on the slide. This email address is not designed to create a device consultancy for every software device issue. We will not be able to answer every question that you have in a complete, detailed written format. What we will try to do is provide you enough information to help you understand the law, the regulation, the guidance in an effort to get you past your current issue or sticking point. I would also like to point out that your questions and issues provide a great amount of influence and direction on how future presentations and materials will be created. Thank you for your time and interest in this very important topic. It has been my pleasure in trying to bring some understanding and clarity to this complex topic. I wish you all the best in keeping your medical device software reasonably safe and effective.